A very good afternoon, everyone. I have this unenviable task of coming between you and our lunch, but I will endeavor to make it an interesting session so that our lunch can be a very interesting time where we can have great discussions. I want to start off with a story. I've been living in Singapore for a very long time. And when I was young, we used to live in HDB flats. And at the bottom of the HDB flats, we have something called the mama shops. Now, how many of you are getting what I'm saying? Raise your hands. Yeah, so a lot of people here, right? So what is a mama shop? It's like a convenience store at the bottom of your HDB flat. And then as kids, right, we'll go there and we'll buy snacks. Now, one of my favorite snacks, if you remember, was this snack called Kaka. And why I like to buy that snack is because when you open it, there's some toy inside of it. If you recall a very famous toy, there's a string spinner. And it got a lot of prominence because in Straits Times, there came out an incident, you used that and some people's eyes got injured. And over time, we actually formed a very good relationship with the owner of the mama shop. I had one shop below my HDB flat and it caught fire. And a lot of us actually went and supported them. Why do we do that? Because we have actually formed a very good relationship with them, a human-to-human bond that is very enduring. Today, if I were to ask you a question, how many of you are confident that your customers trust you? And I know a lot of you will put your chest out and say, yes, we are very confident. Our customers trust us. This is what gets us to bed at night and wakes us up in the morning. And it's right, we should feel that way. However, what if we ask your customers, what do they think about you from a trust angle? So I want to share with you some data. And this data is coming from a survey done by PwC last year. And this is what the reality is. It was a very extensive survey that they did. But one question that they ask is, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your customers' trust towards you? If it's a 10, it's like 100%. If it's 9, it's 90%. And you can see the green line. And they ask the same question to the customers. How much do you trust the companies you're interacting with? There's a huge trust gap. A difference is like 3 times. And that is very concerning. That is very concerning because there is a mismatch between what you think your customers have thoughts about you pertaining to trust and versus the reality on the ground. And so it really begs the question, why this is the case? Why this is the case? And if I were to go back to the story that I was alluding to, of that mama shop below a HDB flat, one of the key points that actually came out from this particular research was that while business executives view trust as a metric that is supposed to be a good metric as long as nothing bad happens, for the consumer it's different. It's all about the small things that matters. And that is what that erodes trust. One of the most important things that consumers value a lot today is data protection. And that is a very great metric that will determine whether you are this side of the trust scale or you're very low down here. So data protection is something that is extremely important. So how do we then earn this trust from our customers today? It is no secret that trust takes a long time to build up. It's a journey. It's a journey that you take to build up trust. But it is very easy to lose all that hard-earned effort, the trust, in the blink of an eye. What do you need to do that? What do you need to lose the entire bucket of water? All that you need is to have a major headline. For example, Acme Corporation's consumer information is now accessible publicly. That's all that you need, and all the trust is completely gone, it's evaporated. So this is what is happening today in the domain of trust. So what do we need to do as members of the IT community to really tackle this very big concern that we have here in the digital world today around protecting the sanctity of the data and ensuring that whatever data that we are being held responsible for when customers interact with us, we are making sure that we are ensuring the sanctity stays there and we retain the trust. And from a technology angle, there's a lot of things that we can do. And it really starts off by looking at three key pillars, in my opinion, which is first of all ensuring that the foundation upon which your businesses are built are secure to begin with. Secondly, the way that you are able to drive compliance in a manner that is dynamic, because we know that cybersecurity and the threat landscape is very dynamic, that is also going to be very key. And finally, adopting a well thought out approach to zero trust is going to be very critical for us as well. So let's start off. Let's start off by talking about a secure infrastructure. And throughout this presentation, I'm going to be using this whole analogy of how in Europe there's this castle and there are guards in the castle. So think about it this way. Today, when we are building our software within our organization, there was this comment that was made by Jenny Tan in the panel earlier, that the way that we build software today is very different from the way that we used to build software in the 2000s. I spent 15 years of my life as a developer, an enterprise Java developer, and things are very different now. People don't code. Forgive me if you are a developer here. Today, there's not much of coding. What happens today is you get pieces of code from GitHub, from libraries, from packages, code that somebody else in your organization has written. And over the past 1 year, you utilize AI, GitHub Copilot, Amazon Whisperer, and so on and so forth to get this code for you. The biggest problem here is that the source for all of your software today is very diversified. The software supply chain is not as simple as it used to be in the past. And what we want to make sure that the weakest link here, which could be any of the chains that you see here, is as secure as possible. We want to make sure that if you want to have a secure software supply chain, every part of the chain will need to be secure, independently secure. That is what will help us get there. Now, how do we go about doing that? One of the ways to go about doing that is to really identify what are the loopholes, what are the vulnerabilities, what are the potential exploits in these software supply chain sources that could be exploited by your bad actors, by your threat actors. And a common way for us to do that is to have a proactive approach to scan as well as assess the level of threats for any potential abnormalities that we find pertaining to the different aspects of this software supply chain. That is going to be extremely critical. Because today, right, that when it comes to issues in software code, I can spend an hour talking about it. From ransomware, to malicious code, to the rise of the software supply chain attacks like Kaseya, like Log4j, like MoveIt, and so on and so forth. So I think a first approach is, let us identify what's out there, what's known, and what are the approach that we can take to have a grasp over what's known. That's something that we absolutely need to do. Now, so does that mean that as a guard in your IT organization who is responsible for guarding the security, safeguarding the security, you can just now take a break and have a coffee? Is that the case? Perhaps not. Because there has been an exponential rise in software vulnerabilities from 2013 all the way to 2023. 27,000 almost as it stands today this year. And I'm guessing by the next 2 years it's going to be like 36,500. Why I say that? That's going to be like 100 vulnerabilities a day. That's a lot. Now, obviously, not all software vulnerabilities are equal because it consists of the whole gamut of software vulnerabilities out there. Some could be just impacting your iOS devices. Some could be impacting your operating systems, for example, like Windows. But there'll be a handful that will directly apply digital applications that you are writing based on cloud native principles. So this is a worrying sign. And you may ask that, hey, Vishal, why is this happening? Despite so much advances in technology, security technology, today we have more security vendors than the past. Then why is this still happening? Doesn't make sense, right? Let me share some of the things that I have found out, why this actually happens. It's because of the way that we have completely revolutionized the way that we build software today. Today, the way that we build software is very different than how we did it in the past. Our software architectures have shifted from being monolithic in nature to being microservices based. What that really means is this. Imagine a big piece of cake, and you can have a problem with that piece of cake. And if you slice it into 10 pieces, potentially you can have 10 different problems right now. So we are basically slicing and dicing a big application, but at the same time we are also opening up opportunities for more security issues. That is the challenge when we go from a monolithic to a microservices architecture. But at the same time, along with that trend, something else is happening. A lot of companies are moving to a very distributed IT landscape for a very good reason, to get agility, to get scalability, and to be able to meet the requests of your business on demand. And that is fantastic. Again, the challenge is this, right? From one data center, now you're opening up to multiple data centers. Think about the advances in autonomous driving, or you talk about things like drone technology. What you're having is that one piece of code is everywhere. And again, that same applies to how you are moving from a centralized to distributed architecture. If I were to use a security term to explain this phenomenon, basically your attack surface is growing, is expanding exponentially from like this to so much more. And that is why you have more vulnerabilities, because you give more opportunities for exploits to occur. So this is a very big issue that we face today. So how I would classify it, this is a tale of two scales. And what do I really mean by that? At one hand, what's happening is that we are moving from our traditional architectures where we have a couple of host machines, but now we are going to expand into many more thousands of VMs and even more containers that are running potentially on VMs or on your bare metal machines. At the same time, as this increases, obviously on the other side of the scale, your vulnerabilities will also increase at the same time. So just having a way to be able to scan and assess the security posture of your organization is not going to be sufficient. Why? Because in security, it is not as important as understanding a vulnerability as it is important as how quickly you are able to respond to it. A company that can identify 10 vulnerabilities and take 10 days to fix is worse off than a company that identifies vulnerability one only but fixes it immediately. So it's also about how quickly you are able to act on it. And that is why we have to apply something known as AI. And no, I'm not talking about artificial intelligence. I'm talking about automating intelligently, intelligent automation. So what this literally means is that why should we have our people, our experts, spend time to uncover and figure out what to do? Why not have technology do it automatically, right? And this is what we really mean by dynamic compliance. How do we ensure that our entire distributed software and infrastructure landscape can be protected in a dynamic manner, such that when we find something, we are automatically able to get a fix to it and then apply that particular fix to our entire landscape. We all recognize that even patching a small error across a very big landscape that can consist of thousands of servers is time consuming. All this takes time. And if a human is going to do it, it also introduces error. Imagine if you're able to do this automatically. It's a fantastic thing. So that's great, right? That's great. But if I go back to my castle analogy, the safeguards that we put in the system, the safeguards or the guards in a castle, only as effective as the knowledge that they have about what is safe and what is not safe. What about the unknown? What is troubling us the most today are things that are hidden that we do not know. Are things that today, as we are in the conference, there is somebody in another part of the world who has already launched an attack and it's in one of our systems and we do not know anything about it. The fear of the unknown causes more damage than what is known, because we all know that an attacker just needs one opportunity and they can do massive things, right? And here we might be protecting 10,000 things, but if we miss that one thing out, I think that can be potentially catastrophic. So how do we then have a grasp on conquering the unknown? This is where something in the technology space that has gained a lot of traction over the past couple of years can be applied. Zero trust. We all know what zero trust is. A lot of us come from a security background. A lot of the speakers would have mentioned this. And my analogy that I want to give you about zero trust is think about us when we go to an office. We all have access cards, which actually allow us to certain privileges, not everything, right? And we need to constantly demonstrate that we have that access. It's not the card, we have to constantly demonstrate that. And at the same time, yes, management can also constantly have the perspective that, hey, I trust this person, but I don't know when this person can become rogue. Zero trust principles are extremely important, and a lot of companies are using different types of models, but zero trust is very popular. So if you look at this particular chart here, almost 80% think that zero trust is either beneficial, and for 40% of them, it's a top priority. Why is that the case? Because zero trust helps to address three things that will help you effectively address unknown security issues within your IT landscape. First of all, it gives you a way to explicitly verify so that you know at a certain point whether this is secure or this is not secure. Secondly, you also have a way to only assign what this particular person or what this particular application can do. By giving the least privileges, you are really protecting yourself. And finally, having the mindset that a breach can happen anytime or a breach has already happened keeps you on your toes because you don't take anything for granted. So zero trust principles are gaining a lot of tractions, and a lot of companies are applying zero trust to help them strengthen their security posture. So all of that is great. Now, how do we apply zero trust in practice? Think about the same castle analogy. If you have an ability to have something like a drone that watches what's happening in the castle, some cameras here, some sensors there, to get a state of what's happening, what we want to be able to do then is to establish what is a normal behavior that happens in the castle. So, for example, you can have a guard that goes in the morning to the washroom, and then probably at 12 p.m. they go to the kitchen, and you observe that. You observe that over time, and you establish that this is what is a normal behavior that is happening in the castle. Now, one fine day, a guard goes to the toilet 5 times in a day. Now, that's something abnormal. Right. Well, obviously, maybe not abnormal. He may have good reasons to do that. But I'm just giving an example. What happens then? Then something out of the ordinary is happening. So perhaps you want to provide an alert that, hey, this is unusual. This has never happened before. Or maybe you want to take a more stringent approach. You must say, hey, I think we need to stop this person. We need to lock him up. So this whole notion here is that we need to have a way to understand what is normal. If we have a way to understand what is normal and what is known, then we can, by using exclusivity, we know what is unknown and what should not be happening. This is an approach that we can take when we also build IT landscapes to understand that, hey, these are the allowed behavior for your systems, for your applications, and anything that happens out of the ordinary can be a potential security concern that we need to address. So, a lot of things I talked about, but in a nutshell, it's imperative that we earn our customers' trust. Trust is built in drops. It's very easy to lose it. You snap fingers and it just vaporizes before your eyes. And data is going to be very critical. Data protection, how do you protect the data, the asset, the oil that powers a lot of the business applications that we have today. Secondly, having an ability to be able to understand what's happening out there, what are the problems is not enough. Being able to do it dynamically, quickly, it's going to be the differentiator. It's going to be what separates the leaders from the laggards in terms of security and security resilience. And finally, zero trust practices will help you ascertain what is known and what is unknown so that you are able to address both of them very, very effectively. SUSE is where I work at. SUSE is a company that's been around for the past 32 years, one of the earliest pioneers of open source software. A lot of you may know us for SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. And over the past 30 years, we have driven a lot of open source innovations in the space of Linux, in the space of cloud native security, as well as container management. And we are doing a lot of cool things. We spend a lot of time in open source communities, driving a lot of foundations in the open source world. And open source is our heritage and our enterprise pedigree.